Welcome to All About Money. The coronavirus pandemic has pushed the world online like never before. But as we increasingly communicate digitally, are we still reading each other correctly? In fact, were we even reading each other correctly before this? Well, let's find out from Kiki Wong, the director of the Silent Company, which trains people in non-verbal communication. All right, Kiki, let's talk about non-verbal communication. Now, obviously, our bodies give away myriad of signs and signals as we communicate, but what does it mean, how is it relevant digitally?
Well, first of all, hi, Diane, and thank you for having me here today. So with lots of online trainings going on now, especially, there are lots of different non-verbal communication which we must be aware of. So let's start off with the background. So we're working from home. So how do you find out the best background? What does it look good? So you want to be careful not to use a background that's too personal, that's showing too much information to the people that you're streaming online with. For example, I personally would just choose a plain background to keep it generic. And another thing to remember would be good lighting. Make sure you can be seen. And also using a mic. Don't just rely on the built-in computer mics because they're generally not very good quality. And the last thing, definitely the camera angle. So you don't want to have the camera too high up, so you're just seeing people's forehead or the top of their head. And you definitely don't want it so low down that they're only seeing your double chin and up your nostrils. So generally, I would say setting your angle of the camera just a little bit above you, so it's tilting downwards, and that will give you the best look.
Nice. Now, you also train people in what's called digital body language, right? Tell us what it is first.
Digital body language covers basically all types of non-verbal messages that are sent and received digitally. So such as emails, WhatsApp messages, and even things like your company website. How user-friendly is it? So that is all digital body language related. But specifically, for example, we find that with the different types of jobs that you do, similar or even the same digital body language would apply. So if you were doing a PowerPoint presentation, for example, for you, a presenter, you would want to make sure the same important points apply, whether you are doing PowerPoints as a student or doing PowerPoints as a presenter. So you don't want it too cramped. You want to be just right with the font size and just basically look right.
Right, but in terms of, reading the signs and signals, apart from the surrounding, like that you have a user-friendly website or your background, it conveys an appropriate message as you communicate with people. Now, you also look at how people write text, for example, or, in terms of that kind of digital communication. Can you give us a bit about that in terms of, what body language, how we should, what kind of signs and signals we should be watching ourselves giving other people?
Yes. So with digital body language, like you said, let's say if you're writing a text message. So nowadays in Hong Kong, especially, we're so fast-paced, everything has to be done efficiently. We just have to communicate all the time. So personally, again, I sometimes have to do the communication using WhatsApp. And it has to be a professional message as well. So I would look out for things like, am I formatting it correctly? Do I still include paragraphs? Am I using all the punctuations that I should be? So if I was writing to a lawyer, definitely I will not be writing any shorthands. I don't use just a U. I would type Y-O-U as a U. And again, my language would be different. So you have to be aware of when you're even sending a text message out, you have to be clear and concise, especially when it's professionally done. So same with email, really. Spelling mistakes, no. Formatting for me is a big thing as well. Just make sure you are making it presentable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Often in the media, we get PR messages, emails and things like that. And just having something as simple as not gone through spell check, immediately you sort of go, oh, what is this about? There's just a little discount that goes on at the back of the head when you see that kind of thing. Or 18 exclamation marks, maybe, for example. That also conveys quite a specific message, I guess. That's the sense you get of what it is. So it does make sense.
You would just feel something is not right, or maybe on the contrary, you think, wow, there's something so well written about this email. I don't know what, but it feels good to be reading this email. So it just gives you the same message if you've done it well.
Right. So, one basic tip, I guess, that you're telling people to take on is use spell check.
That is the absolute number one tip. And as basic and silly as it sounds, I see it every day, spell checks not being used. And it's shockingly surprising how bad it can get.
As a journalist, I will concur on that. Now, let's move away from digital body language. And that your company trains people in all forms of non-verbal communication, right? Give us a little bit, explain to us, what kind of different non-verbal communications are we talking about here?
Well, non-verbal communication actually covers 93% of our communication, which is a high number. And
much higher than expected, really, because we speak with words,
Exactly. I mean, words only cover 7%.
Wow.
So the 93% is all to do with non-verbal. So anything from, let me give you an example so you can easily follow what it is. People will know non-verbal meaning body language, facial expression, how we move. So the example would be 3 scenarios. One, let's say you're meeting someone new. You haven't met them before, and you're only communicating via email first. So that would be where our digital body language would apply. So do you feel like you're communicating well on email? What is the gut feeling of this person? So that's the digital side. Now, the second scenario would be you are just about to meet someone. You've set up a meeting that day. Then you would be having to think about, okay, what am I going to wear that day? And in our body language studies, the first 4 seconds is extremely important to build a good first impression. 4 seconds. And I mean, not just when you start talking. I mean, it's the moment that you see that person, that's when it starts counting.
Interesting.
So you only have 4 seconds to give a good impression or a bad impression to somebody. So in that scenario, you have to be aware of your posture, your stance. How do you walk? Or how is that person walking towards you? Are they very fast or are they quite slow? Are they confident? So all that is going in the back of our minds. Now, the third scenario would be you're actually having a conversation with that person. So that is when our voice matters. Not just our body language or how we look, but how do we sound? Do we speak with a very high pitch all the time, or are we very monotonous and very boring? So all that will come into play when we talk about non-verbal communications.
Right, interesting. So in terms of training, how do you then train people? And what kind of, what do you cover there? Are you teaching people to understand how to read other people's signals, or teaching people how to present themselves correctly? Because perhaps there are people who might find people ignoring what they're saying all the time. Is that something that you help people with?
Definitely, because with communication, it's always a two-way street. So you very correctly say, we do teach people how to present themselves well, how to send out the signals, but also what does it mean when you receive the signals from other people. So it's definitely a two-way thing going on. And just because you're not speaking, it doesn't mean you're not communicating. So we make them aware of that. And we cover theory, because I think it's important to understand this is not just something that I'm telling you, it is actually scientifically based. And the way we train, we have lots of different ways depending on our audience. So to give an example, we sometimes might incorporate games. So interaction is very important because we're talking about body language. You're not just sitting there listening to a lecturer talk. We don't want that. So we incorporate games, we incorporate role-playing scenarios, and we will have some sort of similar to classroom-based training where we have examples of good, positive or negative body language, or even microfacial expressions, which is a very important part of our learning. And we have exercises that they can do as well.
Interesting. Tell us a bit about the microfacial expressions. We hear about these on TV shows, perhaps, when you're looking for clues in the detective shows. But tell us really what it is.
Microfacial expressions, there are 7 main universal types. So by universal, I mean it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter how old you are or what upbringing have you got. And research actually shows that even if you were born blind or deaf, we still show the same micro expressions. If we truly feel happy, we're going to smile. So which is a very amazing research that the findings that they find. So micro expressions, there are 7. So for example, we will have expressions such as happiness, sadness, fear. And in business, one of the tips that I can give you would be to look out for something called contempt.
Ooh.
Now, contempt happens very quickly, and it is often hidden with a smile afterwards. So if you ever see anyone showing contempt, it's just a very, very small, well, if it's a big contempt, it would be large. But basically, if you look at me, it will be, that's it. One side.
Like a smirk kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's like that person doesn't really respect you, or they don't really agree with what you're saying. But with contempt, because it's hidden with a smile quickly, if you miss that, you might thinking that person is smiling at you, right, whereas actually, no, they were totally disrespecting you. So in a business sense, if you see that happening, you want to try and find out as soon as possible, why is there contempt? Right. Even whether it's between staff and managers or between a client that you're presenting to, it's okay to try and find out why are they feeling, why is it there? Because it's a dangerous signal.
Interesting. Now, let's talk a bit about business. You've done work with different businesses where you got feedback after, or like you collected information after, that showed how much understanding this kind of communication helps in business. So give us a little about that.
So in business, when we trained a group of international, how should I put this? A group of salespeople who worked in an international luxury car brand, we found that after they've gone through our extensive advanced training, their sales number increased by 5 to 30%. And also their emotional intelligence increased by an average of 10%. So in a business point of view, when you are aware of all these nonverbal communications, especially microfacial expressions, you are able to connect better with the people that you're talking to. Really, all this training that we're giving people, the ultimate aim is to connect them better. So wouldn't it be great if you know exactly what the other person is thinking when you are selling them a product, when you're negotiating a price? So that's the kind of thing we really want to bring into the business world, how to apply it to their job, whether it's in leadership and management, whether it's in sales and negotiations, or even very commonly we train people in recruitment, HR, and investigation work. And then with investigation, we actually bring in another element of lie detection training.
Interesting. Well, we'll hold on that for a moment, but we will be right back, so stay tuned.